Hey folks, welcome back. This is part 5 where we focus on coloring. And you can see here from my layers arrangement, I've cleaned things up a little bit to make it easier for me to move to the specific part of the drawing that I want to work on. I'm going to first start off by using the rectangular shape tool, because what I'd like to do, my vision for this cover is that I want to have series of pixels or bursts that just appear to be dividing the television set in half. So we're going to see a, sepia toned Rod Serling on the left, your screen left, and a colorized version where we see his shoulders to his foreshortened hand. You'll see it here in a minute, but I'm basically going to repeat this rectangular shape a bunch of times by making copies of it by hitting Command J, of course, and making multiple copies to create a series of staggered rows. Right here, what I'm doing is I'm just adjusting the properties of the roundness of the rectangle with a little bit more precision. So here I'm duplicating it. It's a white shape with a black stroke. And at this stage, it's better to kind of organize your layers so that way you're not having to shuffle through. As you see later on, we will have a ton of layers by the time this thing is done. So the more I can arrange things before I get too deep into it, the easier it's going to be. If you haven't already figured out, Command J is probably my most used keyboard shortcut next to Shift Command Option N, which is to make a new layer. If you've watched these videos with any regularity, you would have probably already memorized those keyboard shortcuts by now. If you're new to the channel, welcome. There are 4 earlier parts where I actually assembled this entire composition from the very beginning, where I start with a pencil sketch and work all the way through. And just recently I created a playlist, so if you just want to watch those videos, you can go back to the playlist. I think it's called the Rod Serling Twilight Zone playlist, or Twilight Zone illustration playlist, or something like that on my channel, and you can kind of catch up. So here I'm using the perspective tool and the scale tool within the transform just to adjust this pattern. I want to move it in such a way where the thumb and the cards are going to be in front of this pixelated pattern. And what I have done to do that is I've rasterized all those shapes. Now I'm going to drop the opacity, go on to the layer that contains that pattern, and this allows me just to see the layers underneath, and I can quickly trim. This is one of these techniques that I use quite a bit. You can always drop the opacity. You don't have to go to the layers panel. You just have to type a number from 0 to 9, and it will go ahead and put a, if you type in 0 or if you type in 1, you get 10%, 2, 20%, and so on and so forth. I typically make a 30% opaque or transparent image so that I can see through the drawing. So now I'm ready to actually begin coloring. This is being recorded in real time. It's about a 25-minute video, give or take, just so that you can get an idea of how my techniques are working without any kind of speed up or any kind of other camera tricks. I do zoom in and I do zoom out so that you can see specifically what I'm doing, but I'm doing this pretty much in real time with no edits. I'm going to use that black background as a basis for creating a selection. Then I'm going to inverse that selection to color in the TV. The reason why the cards are in white is because in the cards group folder on the lowest layer, I have all the cards in white. If you remember from last video, I did that so that I didn't have to delete portions of Rod Serling's shirt or jacket or the television set. So that's just something that's going to save me some time. The two tools that I use for selection are the Magic Wand tool. I also use the Lasso tool. Magic Wand tool is if I have a very clear enclosed area that I would like to control colors with. Lasso tool is when I don't. I haven't seen any color photos of Rod Serling. I suppose I could have, but I'm at this point just trying to guess what color I would like to make his suit. So everything to the right of that vertical column of pixels is going to be colored. So I'm at this point colorizing everything. And on the left-hand side, Serling will appear to be monochromatic, like you probably see him on a television set. Why did I choose green as my base color? It doesn't really matter what color you use. I just started out with green because I felt like the TV set, I wanted to kind of have a green sepia tone. So that's kind of what my initial instinct was. I'm not super rigorous in terms of following the exact sequence of steps for every single drawing that I make. I do generally like to go ahead and get the color flats in before moving on to highlights and shading, but sometimes as I work, maybe if I feel like it or if I just want to see how something looks, I will alternate between color flats and adding highlights and shading. So you might see me do that in this particular video, and that's totally okay. Let me know what you think of these multi-part videos. I really don't know how they're going to do in terms of just folks watching them or not. I suppose this could be useful to somebody. I mean, that's the reason why I'm recording all of this stuff. But you let me know what you'd like to see. I think after I finish this Serling Twilight Zone piece, I'm going to go back to my, one-shot tutorials. So that is definitely going to be happening. And if you'd like to see me talk about a specific topic, just drop me a comment. Let me know what you'd like me to talk about or demo, etc. But I wanted to give a long form piece just so that A, you can see how long this takes me to do, and B, you can see the steps that I follow to realize a completed image. Now, the only part that I didn't record was the typography and the typesetting for the magazine cover. I just felt that would not be interesting for most folks just to watch me do that in real time. It is a slow process. It is a trial and error process. You just, probably don't want to see that. So I skipped that part, but the illustration part of it, going from the original pencil sketch all the way to final colors, that's what you're going to see. After this particular video, there is one more part where I will work with textures and other elements to refine the colors a bit more. So that is coming up, and I anticipate getting this thing complete. If you want to see what the finished piece will look like, I will show it, of course, on the next video, but I will also post it on my Instagram account. I'm at Krishna Draws on there. If you're watching this from the Fediverse, from Mastodon, howdy. I'm also on Mastodon. That is my favorite social network. I'm not on Twitter, or I'm not active on Twitter, and I'm not on Threads. But if you like them, that's great. I just like Mastodon. So here's where I'm working with a monochromatic palette, just keeping everything in shades of green. I'm also attempting to desaturate the colors a little bit more. I don't want to make them pop as much. I will go back in and add some highlights to give some semblance of lighting for Rod Serling, but that's, it's going to be fairly simple. My technique for coloring is I establish a base color layer, and then I make a selection on that base color layer, and I jump that selection by hitting Command J, and then using the hue and saturation tool, Command U. Command J, Command U are basically muscle memory at this point for me. For this video, after I finished recording it, I did make a few little tweaks that they're not super major or anything, so I'm not worried about leaving them off, but the kind of like giving a little bit of a dull shine to the right-hand side of the television tube. I did that, just off camera. Because it's one thing to record a video for folks to watch it, but it's another thing to actually look at the drawing and kind of make corrections in solitude. And that's something I've noticed about, creating these videos on YouTube. I generally tend to work faster, and I always want to go back after the video is recorded to make changes and fixes, because that's normally what I do. So I'm just kind of sharing a little bit about how the sausage is made here. And you will see in the final reveal for this particular stage that there are some minor subtle differences there, but nothing too major. If you're watching to this point, I hope you stick around till the end of the video, but while you're watching it, I would love to know more about what your favorite Photoshop keyboard shortcuts are. Have you been a keyboard shortcut person before watching these videos? Or are you more of a menu person where you just go use the mouse? Let me know. I'd like to know if the videos are having any kind of impact or influence in terms of maybe expanding your horizons and using keyboard shortcuts. For me, I just can't live without keyboard shortcuts. If it's something that I'm doing over and over again, at least 4 or 5 times or maybe more, I'd like to learn a keyboard shortcut for that specific task. It's going to save me time later on. But I'm curious about you. Do you use keyboard shortcuts? And if so, what are your favorite keyboard shortcuts in Photoshop? I'm moving up and down the layers here because for whatever reason, the colors that I had previously established for Rod were not showing up. So there's a little bit of slight dead air there, but that's what happens again when you're working with multiple layers. So I'm making a selection using the polygon lasso tool. That's a great tool for making selections that are straight. And I'm using that on the base color layer to fine tune the right side of the TV. I want the right side of the TV to be in color. So basically it's going to be kind of monochromatic on the left. It's going to be colorful on the right. The cards that are popping out of the screen are going to be color as well. It was just something that I, kind of envisioned doing. I've always been fascinated with the idea of seeing, color transition to black and white and vice versa. So that's kind of the impetus behind this. And it's also very Twilight Zone-esque because if you watch the original Rod Serling Twilight Zone, they're all in black and white. So seeing it in color would just be very trippy, I would imagine. I hope they don't colorize the Twilight Zone because I do like it in black and white. I think there is something very, very pure and very, um, very nice. I mean, like if you've watched the Twilight Zone episodes that are in black and white lately, if they're, if you have them on Blu-ray or some other high quality streaming service, they look good. The black and white versions look really, really clean. And I just really think it looks great. I've been watching a lot of the original Twilight Zone episodes on, I'm trying to think of the streaming service that I'm using right now. I think it's Tubi, something like that. Or Freeverse, Freevee, I think that's what I'm using. So that has some pretty good content. And if you're a fan of the old Twilight Zone episodes, you're looking for where you can stream them, Freevee, I think, can set you up pretty well. Magic Wand tool is awesome. You have to make sure that you set it up correctly. You want to make sure that you sample all layers. That allows you to make selections without having to worry about the selections not taking because it's looking at the entire layer stack. And if that sounds confusing, I've talked about that particular aspect in previous videos where I talk about color flats. So here I'm just adding some color, a little highlight on the lips, nothing super duper fancy. And then for the card subfolder, I basically have a white color for all the cards, and I can just simply select that specific layer, and you're going to see that here as I expand this out. Oh, and before I do that, I also wanted to simulate the idea of a kind of a blurry fringe. You can see that I'm using a copy of my inks layer and just changing the color overlay to green and shifting it a few pixels to the right. That kind of gives it a little bit more depth, and it kind of gives it that softer look as if you're watching it on a CRT. Or a tube-based TV. I thought that effect looked neat, and I kind of discovered that by accident before recording this particular video. I was like, I want to see if I can make that effect, and I just gave it a try, and sure enough, it worked. Here I'm adding some highlights just to give a little bit more tonal variation to the image on the left. Just using white. I'm assuming the light source is coming from up top. White just makes it pop a little bit more. I'm having fun with this piece. This is pretty cool. Some of you, if you've looked at the previous video, you might have noticed that I've been changing the typography on the top. Nothing is super set in stone just yet. Normally I don't put that on there until the very end, but just for context purposes, I wanted to let folks know that, yeah, this is supposed to be some sort of fanzine for Twilight Zone. It's a mock cover for a Twilight Zone fanzine. I wanted to really punch that turquoise color up just to provide even more of a stark contrast between the left and right hand side. In the next video, I'm actually going to be incorporating some textures and just kind of subtly refining the colors just to give them a little bit more warmth, to give them less of a digital look, I guess. So that's going to be happening here. I'm making a selection now to where I can stay within the line, so to speak, and create some reflections on the tube of the TV. Really accentuating that roundness, and I'm also going to put some lines here momentarily where kind of establishes the shininess of the picture tube. And I've talked about this technique before. I'm just basically duplicating and offsetting these vertical lines. Always use your brush tool to create vertical lines. You can hold down Shift to create a straight line. Do not use the pencil tool. The pencil tool, yes, it can make straight lines, but they just doesn't look good when you're trying to go for that old school clean inked look. So there you go. I think we're almost there. I'm going to just make one additional offset copy. That's what I'm doing right here. And I'm just shifting it off to the left. It gives it a little bit more of a slight blur. I think that effect looks pretty cool. Looks very much like an old TV. You can see it up close. And at this point, I think we're more or less done. The reveal will be happening here in a sec. If you've enjoyed this video, definitely give it a like so that other folks can find it. If you're new to the channel, just drop a note in the comment. Let me know where you found this particular video from. I know the algorithm plays a huge role in that, but maybe you were referred to this video or one of my videos from a friend. Always curious to know where people are watching these things from too. So if you're a new viewer, please introduce yourself so that way we can build that sense of community and I can learn a little bit more about you. And if you're watching this video from London, big shout out. I was just in London last week with my family for our vacation and we had a blast. So yeah, London's awesome. Here I'm playing with the color of the pixels. I'm going to add a stroke. I need to refine the size of the stroke. I want them to be kind of thin. And there we go. Here's the reveal. As always, thanks for watching the videos and stay tuned for part 5 or part 6, I guess, coming up soon. Catch you then.